Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Liz Schaller. I am the NIMAC director, joined today by Rosemary Horton Baggott, our expert Braille 2000 transcriber for session 5 of our NIMAS textbook transcription series. Before we jump in today, let's find out who we have joining us. Let us know which option best describes your role. Are you a NIMAC authorized user or state coordinator, a NIMAC accessible media producer, a Braille transcriber not registered with the NIMAC, or a TVI or paraprofessional, or other? If you're other, please put that in the chat what your role is. We'd love to know. All right. Let's see. So about half of our folks here today are NIMAC users, and then we have some transcribers who aren't currently registered with the NIMAC. So welcome, everybody. Let's jump in. Can you advance the slides,
Oh,
Rosemary?
yeah.
No problem. So today we have two big topics that we're covering. The first is alphabetic references like your glossary and your index. And then second, we're going to jump into math and specifically MathML tagging. And Rosemary has lots of great examples to show you of how to work with the math in NIMAS files. Our learning objectives for today are to learn how to format alphabetic references in Braille 2000, to learn how to create a running footer with guide words in a glossary or index, and then third, to understand how Braille 2000 and Braille Blaster import math from NIMAS. Okay, so we have a quick poll question before we jump into our alphabetic references section. We'd like to know, how do you set guide words in glossaries or indexes or indices? Do you set them manually? Do you use the built-in Braille 2000 tool, other, or I've never had to set guide words, which is perfectly fine. Let us know. Okay. Let's see. So it looks like quite a few folks use the built-in tool, but not everybody. So that is something that Rosemary is going to be talking about today. Awesome. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
So just a few notes pulled kind of from formats and things that refer to what we're going to cover today. For alphabetic references, this applies to index and yeah. So NIMAS pretty much, it follows the print book formatting, and the transcriber may need to edit based on what's required for Braille. Uh, Often and I'll show an example of this, if there's a more advanced text in the index and you have sub-entries under a main entry, they'll be in a paragraph form, and formats requires that they be in a nested list form, which is a lot more readable for the reader. So I will show example of changing that. Often throughout the index, it's just the print dash and hyphen are difficult to tell which is which. So you might see that there's pages 3 to 4 with what should be a hyphen in between, and it comes in as a dash. And I'll usually do a global, uh, once I'm sure that that's the only place they're showing up, I'll do a global change and just search for the dash numeric indicator and replace it with hyphen indicator. I might have an example of that today. See if it shows up. Type forms, well, let me see, go down. This is the last item here. One thing that happens is Braille 2000 may insert either a numeric termination indicator or a type form indicator, termination indicator, where formats doesn't require it. And I'll show that as well, a couple places. The type forms, let me go to the next slide, which will show what I'm talking about there. Sometimes in the index, if the print shows that there's a reason for italic page numbers, that's different from regular page numbers and bold page numbers. For example, here, the index key. In the index, certain page numbers will be listed as, in italics, and certain ones in bold, certain ones plain. Can't do a global entry to take those out because they refer to the material that's being labeled. Here's an example. So we look here. This has got both things we talked about. This is a few entries from an index. Alkaline batteries, 634 is the page number. That's plain old regular. We have to take out the bold type indicators on the entry. And that's something that sometimes Braille Blaster will do. It's in their tool, but I think it has to do with tagging. So in the examples I have, these bold came in. All the entries are bold type. I have to change them manually because sometimes there's a page number like 144 here that's in bold type because, going back, it's a page number referring to a vocabulary term. And so that's just an example. The index we have to do some editing on, but it's kind of fun with the formatting already done. It's really fun I love it with the formatting that comes in with. So we'll demonstrate that later. Glossaries are covered in formats 21.6 and again, I mentioned NIMAS and Braille 2000 follow print book formatting. So when I already talked about this, changing the type form of the entry words if it's there. Sometimes there's in two different languages. I have one today to demonstrate it's in English and Spanish. In that case, check with the agency because they may or may not want the two different languages. And so we either delete the Spanish or format it specifically, nested list usually. Braille 2000 converts sections into other languages. Still need to proofread, the symbols and whatnot. The language by which the glossary is organized is used for the guide words. And we list any foreign language symbols on the special symbols page. So, formats. Yes, the English and foreign language glossary words can appear a couple different ways in print. They might be separate entries on the same page, or they might be, and then you use 1 to 5 margins for the main ones and 3 to 5 for the sub-entry words. That's what I have an example of today. Sometimes they put the English and foreign language glossary words on facing pages in print, but again, in Braille, we avoid that nightmare for the reader and just do the nested list format. I'm guessing that involves some cutting and pasting. I haven't seen that much. Combine the entries into a nested list as above and used combined print page numbers. If you have your English on print page 4 and your Spanish or French or whatever on print page 5, you're just going to name the page number as 4-4-5. If glossaries have glossary with samples, obviously omit irrelevant illustrations, retain diagrams in math and science, adjusting headings, guide words, etc. We'll be doing some of that today. And the guide words, familiar with in dictionaries, encyclopedias. I don't know if they print those anymore, but at the top of a print page, you'll have I'm sorry, they'll go away in a minute. I don't know if you hear that background noise. Top of the print page, they'll have the guide words are the first word on the page and then the last word on the page. And it's a reference for readers finding what's on that page. In Braille, we don't do the print page guide words because the pages are different. It says, unless the text is teaching readers how to use guide words, we omit print guide words. But we do add Braille page guide words to all alphabetic references except bibliographies. And they go on the bottom line as a footer. And that's what I'll be demonstrating today. And that's going to be the first entry word on the Braille page and the last entry word on the Braille page. Transcriber generates those. I've done those in the past. Heavy duty. I am so grateful for this tool because it saves hours, and I'll demonstrate that. So to set guide words in Braille 2000, which I'll demonstrate later, Braille 2000 will read the file and generate glossary guide words. The command is do running footer or the letter O. And then pretty much we select cell one guide words unless that's pretty well, unless you were setting guide words for, say, the Spanish, and then you would pick cell three guide words if they were nested, but I don't know when that might happen somewhere. Braille 2000 will populate the footer, and it'll take the first word of the first and last entries on the page. So it might be that the first word, maybe it's acute triangles, and you want to have both acute triangles on there. There's a way to edit that after it's generated. Pretty easy. Again, I'll demonstrate that, and Braille 2000 will change it. And again, have a reference for a video setup of this. Jonathan Powers has created a video on his YouTube channel, Braille Tips. Shows how to generate the guide words in Braille 2000, how to edit long entries. So we've referenced a few of Jonathan's videos throughout this course, and they're on the slides. But if you do check them out, maybe like and subscribe on YouTube. It makes them more available to users because his stuff is really excellent, easy to follow. So I'm going to stop my share for a minute, Liz, if you want to share something about math, and I'm going to change my files here.
Sure, yeah. Well, and I do want to note
Oh,
about glossaries, just kind of behind the scenes when you're talking about the NIMAS files. Um, Sometimes with so there is a special type of list tagging in NIMAS that's used specifically for glossaries. And Braille software works very well with it. Braille 2000 and Braille Blaster both recognize it. But sometimes with foreign language glossaries, because of the way the print book is formatted, they will actually be supplied as tables using table tagging instead of the glossary list tagging. And again, that's to capture the print book layout because NIMAS is used for other format production, not just for Braille. So you may encounter that if you are working with, specifically, this would be like mostly we see it in larger textbooks with substantial glossaries. Sometimes they will be tagged as tables instead of the glossary lists. And let me see here. Julie does have a question. Is there a way to use the Braille 2000 running footer tool with long outlines? Words won't work in that instance. Do you happen to know, Rosemary?
Julie, can you clarify what you mean by long outlines? Not,
You're welcome to come off mute too, Julie, if that would be easier. She said entire documents in outline form.
that would be, now again, I'd have to look at, is that something we format guide words for? Well, that would be, guess your choice. Not that
It,
I know of, but I've only used it for um, the glossaries and bibli and it says they do Braille formats said glossaries and index everything except bibliographies. So
Hmm.
I don't know. That would be a question. I'm sure that you know, if you contact Bob Stepp, he'd be able to answer that, but I wouldn't know. Sorry.
I did contact Bob Stepp and um, I didn't ask the question directly. I just told him that I was having to set the footers manually, and he told me why it wasn't working because I was having a little problem with it. Um, but formats does address this, what the running footer is supposed to say. It doesn't, I haven't found a way to use um, the Braille 2000 tool in a way that complies with formats because it's not just a simple tagging of first and last words.
Hmm.
Right. Well, yeah, my understanding is that's what the
Interesting.
Braille 2000 tool is designed to do, but so no, I don't know about that particular. It might be a manual thing. I don't know.
Does anyone else have any experience with that or have played around with it or attempted to do that? That does sound like an interesting use case, or challenge.
I mean, you could check out. I watched Jonathan's video recently. I don't see him on here, and he always does. He usually does a little more than what I'm doing in demos. I don't recall hearing anything along those lines, but you know,
It would be on my Braille 2000 upgrade wish list.
okay.
It's
Well,
good to have that.
yes, Bob, no. Yeah, those are good.
All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat. So I think Rosemary, you can keep going.
Yeah, and here I was taking down files, and I'm not ready to demo yet. It's like,
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no worries at
do that
all.
again. We'll do that again. So from
Yeah, just go ahead and share your.
okay, so math. Just going to talk about this and briefly, and then demonstrate it later. So,
You
develop.
need to share your. You'll have to reshare.
That's the part I always miss. I tell it which screen I want to share, and then I forget to share.
Yeah, yeah. I have to click the button. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
And are you seeing it?
Yes, yeah. And I do have
No.
a poll question
Yes, because I don't
here.
see my notes here.
Okay, so jumping into math, how do you transcribe technical materials? Nemeth, UEB technical, both UEB and Nemeth, or I haven't transcribed technical materials, which is not a wrong answer. It's okay if that's the case. Let us know. Okay. I'll share our results. So I think a majority of folks said they work with both UEB and Nemeth, which is great. Rosemary is going to be talking about both today. And then there are a few folks who haven't transcribed technical materials before. So hopefully you will get something out of this as well.
I'm having a problem here. It's sharing here, but I'm not seeing my slides, which I get my notes, which I guess I'll just do without, but I don't know what happened when I went off before. Um,
Well, we can see, yeah, we can see the slides. So I
yeah,
think
I have
we're okay.
ones with notes, so I'll be winging on my notes. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so as I started to say that both developers, both of Braille Blaster and Braille 2000, are continually working on improving math translation, and Liz may speak more about that in a little bit. There is free text support available. This is just showing what's available. Braille Blaster and to Braille 2000 conversion, Braille 2000 direct import. With version 2 will depend on the file. There are some that don't come in directly, but you can always go through Braille Blaster. And then Braille 2000 version 3 is still in development. I know he's got a lot of goals for math and that, and Julie's going to let him know she's got a wish list, something else to go on there. Anybody who wants to be a version 3 beta tester, I don't know if this is still the case, but it was, just contact Bob to see if he's doing that. You could access pre-release copy to let him know your wishes. So Nemeth, this actually applies to both Nemeth and UEB, that the current, well, the Braille Blaster conversion, and which is what I'm primarily using, but it shows the fraction indicators, the radical symbols. I made that word up, symbolization. I don't know if that's it or not, but symbols for square and other roots. And then there's the NIMAS switch indicators are there. So as long as the material is tagged as MathML, all the surrounding simpler math in expressions will be converted as well. So it's growing more and more comprehensive. Uh, so I'm going to what I'm demonstrating primarily today is the Braille Blaster to Braille 2000 conversion, and it's more upper level math, but it includes the elementary in there too. So that's yeah, we're going to demonstrate alphabetic references. I'll show briefly how the pronunciation key comes in a glossary, a multilingual glossary, and how to set the guide words. Going to do a little bit with the index showing how to create a nested list from those sub-entries that come in as paragraphs. and then also how to set guide words in that work too, because it's pretty simple. And then we'll take a look at some MathML and see, look at both the NIMAS and the UEB technical conversions. And Liz, now I'm going to let you talk about, if you would talk about that MathML briefly while I get my file set up. I'm going to stop my share.
Sure, sure. So, so a little bit about MathML. MathML is optional math tagging in NIMAS. So it's not something that is required to be present in NIMAS files. I will say, as time has gone on and MathML has been more widely utilized for, digital instructional materials and that sort of thing, that we do see it more and more in our NIMAS file sets as well. So if you are working with content that was copyrighted in the last couple of years, I think you're more likely to see MathML, tagged MathML in your NIMAS file than if you're working with older instructional materials files. Now, what Rosemary was kind of alluding to in talking about the Braille Blaster conversion is that as long as the math that is present in the NIMAS file is tagged as MathML, the Braille conversion software should recognize it as math and tag it accordingly. But not all math, particularly simple math expressions, are always caught and tagged correctly by a NIMAS conversion vendor. So you may run into situations where you have a NIMAS file and 90% of the math was tagged as MathML, comes over really well in your conversion, but that other 10%, and it does tend to be simple math expressions, the vendor may not tag them as math. They may just include them as regular text in the NIMAS file. So those may require more editing on the transcriber side to correctly tag them as math. So that's what Rosemary was alluding to earlier, is that even when you have a file that contains math tagging, there may be some expressions that were missed, and you may have to do some editing.
Thank you, Liz. And yeah, to interject there about with it, the simpler math not being, when it's not tagged, it's not a big issue actually in UEB because UEB is pretty much symbol for symbol. So in UEB, plus signs, operation signs, comparison signs will come in because that's the UEB symbol for it, which is one of the beauties of UEB. It would be more in Nemeth where different symbols are used. So that's just, and I had a little bit of math in the beginning of the series, just showing how I formatted the one third grade math book. And
Right.
again, those portions were not tagged, but because I was in UEB, the symbols were accurate. I had to go in and remove spaces and places. So there's always some editing, but it's so much of it is there. It's really, really helpful. And with that, I'm back. Actually, what I'm doing here is I got my timing off on that, but we'll make it work. So if there are not any questions, I'll go ahead with the demo. I've stopped sharing the slideshow.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions. So yeah, let's jump in and do our alphabetic references demo, but definitely be thinking if you have any questions about math, we're happy to kind of discuss that. But yeah, we want to go ahead and
Yeah.
move ahead with the glossary, Rosemary.
So this is on the right. I have a copy of the print page that's starting this glossary, and on the left, this is just to show how it comes in. I'm not going to demonstrate all of it because you'll see the first part is the pronunciation key, and I found those to be translated very well. This is a formatting thing. This is a table thing that I'm not going to do right now, but I just wanted to show how it comes in. So I'm going to go to the actual beginning of the glossary. Now, this is in English and Spanish. And so what we want is a nested list. The English entries would be 1 with runovers and 5. The Spanish would be 3 runovers and 5. And put it, for whatever reason, it's come in the opposite, but it's not a big deal. Let's just start a new page because I would actually be starting the glossary portion on a new page, and I would center that with my speed braille key, the capital A. And so a couple of things we'll see if I show this in print briefly. the headings are repeated. English and Espanol are repeated. I don't want those in there, so I'm going to do a global, remove them. Then I'm going to look over here and just going to show you some editing things. See that the print shows absolute 0, colon, and then 0. And in the Braille entries, for whatever reason, there's no space after the colon. So I'm going to show what I would do with that. There is in the, so let's just show you a few of the edits. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go to a different slide to show, or different file to show the guide words. Back into my Braille view. And first thing I'm going to do, what's the first thing? Set a bookmark, highlight English colon space, copy it. Now I did, I'm going to search, find that and the space. And then I'm going to just nothing. Put in, I did not replace it with anything. So you see the file shrunk because it took out all those extra English things. I'm going to do the same with the Espanol. I'm not going to insert an extra space. So again, you're going to watch the file shrink. Oh, it's so cool. There's less to look at. Now there's the bold thing. In this glossary, I look and I see that there is no specific need for any bold in entries. I've already checked that out in print. So I'm just going to remove the bold type. I would do a global, take that out. But just a few things to notice that this would require a good bit of editing. I'm not going to do all of it here. But if you look at this right here, we have the 0, bold type 0, and then they put a grade 1 indicator before a colon and no space before the grade 1 terminator. And I'm not sure what all that's about, but it's unnecessary. So I'm going to have to get rid of a lot of that. I would do some searching and say, okay, every place there's a grade 1 terminator, I'm seeing no space after it. So I might get brave. Right now I'm going to do it for demo's sake. I would not do a global edit unless I had checked this more thoroughly, but I'm going to put that bold terminator in there and replace it with a space. I'm also going to get rid of any bold word indicators. So the file keeps shrinking. This is what's happening. And it took out the spacing. So do it again and get rid of bold passage indicators. So that's how I use that. Going back. Then I'd have to deal with this. Okay, there's a grade 1 indicator colon and a space. And technically what we're supposed to do in a glossary according to formats, after the entry words, oh no, if print shows a colon, which it does, we leave the colon. If it does not, we put 2 words and 2 spaces in there. So I would leave that, except I don't want the grade 1 indicator in front of the colon because I don't need it. So I'm going to take that out too. I'm going to replace it with a colon. So there's the format the way I want. Now, if I were going to I'd have to do this manually. I'm going to highlight the English entry, use my speed Braille key to convert it to, nope, use my speed Braille key for 1 run-overs and 5. I have a different one. And then for the Spanish should be the 3 run-overs and 5. I'm also going to need to convert the Spanish. I have a speed Braille key to do that. I haven't used it in forever, I think. Yes, confirm that for the code change, and that will confirm. And it comes out. So Braille 2000 will do that. And then I would proof it just to make sure. Take out the spaces, make this 1 row numbers and 5. Stop. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to use something that's not a just, there we go. And I might, since I have that highlighted, I might just do the English as well. Just that's pretty much how I would set that up. It's still all going to need to be proofread, but I'm using speed Braille keys to create the to do the formatting and the language conversion. So there's my first page there done. And if there's any questions on that, I'm going to go to another file that's already been formatted more than the further along than this to show what I do with the entry words. Okay. If anybody has any questions, but
Yeah, I'm not seeing any. So
now the one thing I've noticed here, when I use the speed Braille, when I use the set guide words, it takes the first entry word in cell 1, absolute 0, on that page, and it will take the last one, acid base indicator. Because I practiced with this, I found, okay, this is just an example of how this would be there would actually need to be a TN here, I think, explaining the formatting, or it might not even be used, but English on the left, Espanol on the right, and say that we're showing it that as a nested list. I'm going to take that off for right now, because if I leave that in there, it's going to mess up what Braille 2000 reads as the first entry word. So I'm just going to take that out for now. I can always go back and put it in. But here I am at the top of the glossary to set the guide words, and it's going to do it for the whole file. The command is do. O for running footer. Hit enter. And I'm going to select cell 1 guide words. Those are the ones I want to base it on. Okay. And I still can't believe this happens. When I've done textbooks in the distant past and I've spent hours doing this, it's like, that was easy. Is that all there is? So there's the word absolute dash acid base. And if I go down, let me set a bookmark. It's all the way through the file. Now, let's say I have these spaces in the file for whatever reason. I left them in to show you what it will do. You see at the bottom of every page is the footer in the yellow. I look at this and I say absolute and acid base. Well, I really wanted to say absolute 0 because there might be like an absolute value or something. So I'm going to highlight that absolute 0 that I want and use the other command, which is do, and the W for set guide word text, W. And in the pop-up box, it says absolute 0. That's what I want to be the left first guide word. I just say okay. And you see that it changed at the bottom. It now says absolute 0. And if I want to see if acid base indicator fits as well, highlight it, do W for set guide word text. There it is. Now let's say that I found out that acid base indicator didn't all fit on there. There is provision, I think it does, but there is provision for in formats to just use part of that word. So let's just say I wanted to just say acid base IND. It's just for reference for finding it. So I'm going to edit that in there. Select OK, and you'll see that it did fit. Because we do need to have the 3 spaces between the end of the guide word and the page number, and at least 3 spaces between the left margin and the first guide word. And again, Braille 2000 will take that into account. So, and it moved the other text to the rest of the line. So I'm going to want to check on every page, acidic and activated. Is that what I want? A note, did it take the one from before? Okay, acidic solution. I can edit like that. I won't edit anymore. I just showed how to edit that. I will show what happens if I go down and, oh, there's these spaces here. How's that going to affect things? The first one on the page was actual yield. And the last one here is addition reaction. I'm going to change the actual yield just to make the actual down here be actual yield by doing that. Edit, actual yield, okay. Notice it changed actual yield. I'm also going to go down and I'm going to get rid of this space and watch what happens to the right guide word. It was acidic reaction, addition rather, and it just changed to alcohol because this text came up. This again saves, if you've ever done manual guide words, if you're doing manual guide words, this saves hours of life and my sanity too. So that's
I have a question, Rosemary, because you did abbreviate a word earlier. The tool is not going to do that for you, right? It's not going to abbreviate words.
right. It's just going to
Okay.
take the first word on the page, the first word of the first entry and the first
Mm-hmm.
the last entry.
Mm-hmm.
Because the actual guide word here is olefinic compounds
Right.
and all this stuff. Yeah, but yes, that's what this edit tool does.
Mm-hmm.
So again, because that's something you still are going to have to proofread it and check
Mm-hmm.
it out and see if you want to change those, but it's such an easy way to change it. I was doing all these direct entry years ago. So any other questions? I'm going to show that tool one more time briefly in the index, but unless anybody specifically has.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
One with the
I'm
index.
not seeing any in the chat. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, take a look at the index.
Okey-doke. Here we have index. I'm just going to show you this. So don't need that one. This is a sample index that came in. Again, this is where we have the well, italic page. Yes, I showed this slide earlier. Italic page numbers are for page numbers where there's an illustration referring to that entry word. Bold are their vocabulary terms. They even have italic page number plus ACT as an activity. So that basically says the type form is essential. And if I show this in print, you'll see they all came in with the bold type. And this is why Braille Blaster will sometimes has that option to remove emphasis from list prefixes. This is a prefix in a list. And it would be great if it was removed from here, but otherwise I'm going to have to do it manually. This is also, oh no, that doesn't have to do it. Okay, never mind. So back to Braille. What I would do here, the index key, format that differently, I'd format that as a box, that kind of thing. We've done that before. That's a different format. But what I'm going to look at is the actual index stuff. Still haven't created a speed Braille key for that. So I do know that after the letters, there's no longer a blank line. So this was an older version. So I have here, this is not real big, but just to see, I just clicked on another one. Actually, I don't need that one anymore. But okay. I inadvertently deleted that, but I don't really need it for what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to show the print underlining thing. I'm going to have to take this out, the absolute value, leave the page number. I think all I wanted to do was show how that comes in because I'm going to use another one to show editing. But this does show you how the Yeah, absorption spectrum, that's not the one I have. This is the one I want. All right, I'm going to go into a different, oh, this is 761. This is the index formatted. All right, just quickly looking, this is what it's going to look like finished. And here's the absolute 0. This goes back to the other page, absorption spectrum. It should look like this when I'm finished. And this is where I will come back to this and set the guide words in a moment, because I did not set guide words, but I want to show this one example of how to edit this. So the angular frequency, right, set that. And I'm going to put this about up here. It's not all the way at the top of the page, but I'll put the green line on it. When I get it to the top of the page, I have a, what do you call it? Heterophoria that wants to take my eye off that way. And I'm going to do this so I don't keep getting lost. So here's the angular frequency. So that's as should be. If you look at the print over here, that's the top angular frequency. Here I have the bold type. Take out the bold type. Page 188. Great. That's what I want. Next line, angular impulse, regular momentum theorem. And then the page number is supposed to be bold because it's important in the key. So what I have to do is get rid of these, get rid of this. First of all, I want this to be 1 run overs and 5. I did with the speed Braille key. I take out the bold terminator, but I do include a bold word indicator. Angular momentum astronomy and 2A. So the angular momentum, the entry word, I delete the bold emphasis. This goes to the next line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell all of this, I want it to be, these are the sub entries, I want them to be 3 run overs and 5. Then so the print just shows paragraph format. We want to make it a nested list so it's more readable. And I'm just following print for the emphasis and where to break the line. So astronomy and 218, hit enter, and it takes it down. Since I formatted that paragraph as nested list, 3 run overs and 5, it's coming out that way. Conservation of 229, 230. Next line. Explanation of, I keep the 218 bold type. However, I do not need a bold terminator before the comma. The comma is bold, and even if it isn't, we have this whole thing with UEB that it's been recommended we don't confuse the poor readers. But he's out there, wants to reinforce that for me. I mean, it makes sense to me. Don't put those extra symbols in there if we don't need them. So go over here to 642 and come down to the next, or 641, down the next line, human body and 219. So I'm going back and forth between the print and the Braille measurement of 218. So this whole thing, entry for angular momentum astronomy and what angular momentum has been formatted properly now. I'll do one more angular velocity, take out the bold on the entry word, format the rest of it, highlight it, and enter my speed Braille key for 3 run overs and 5. And now I notice a couple things here. Here's this dash and print. It's technically a hyphen. Doesn't have to do with length, it has to do with usage. Now, a dash separates, a hyphen joins. So this needs to be a hyphen in Braille. So what I'm going to do, because I know this happens throughout this glossary, throughout this index, and that's pretty much the only place it happens. It happens this way more than where it might be used. I'm going to highlight the dash and the numeric indicator. Save that. Put a bookmark, highlight to the end of the file, search for, that didn't come out right. All right, I might not have saved it right. I'm going to enter a dash followed by a numeric indicator, and I'm going to replace that with a hyphen numeric indicator. Or there were a lot of those, so it shortened the file, a lot. Okay, So now we come back and we see that says 186-187. In this case, 186 is bolded in print and 187 is not. So here I do need a bold terminator after the 186 up under above my green line. And you see that changed. The 187 is now non-bolded. So again, here's another place where there's an italicized 187. Is it 187? Yes, 187 here in print and up here in Braille. They put an italic terminator before a comma. I don't need that. You copy that. Replace italic terminator comma with just a comma. And it did it for the whole file, a lot of them. So I'm really grateful for that tool because back in the day, I'd have been doing those all manually. And then I just have to format the rest. So I have explanation of goes all the way to 218. And then I have to come down to the next line with the torque and so on and so forth. And, animals, 290. Now, see, this didn't take for some reason. I might have did a wrong entry. You have a bold terminator followed by a comma. I would replace that with just a comma. I'm not going to do all those right now. Here's a italicized followed by a period. So again, I would take this italicized italic terminator period throughout the file, just replace it with a period. It's a lot, but it's not nearly it's a lot easier than doing it all completely manually using these tools. And there might be others. But that's just showing what the process I'd go through for all of this. And you have to do that for every entry, but it's kind of like a way of proofreading too as you go. So I'm going to go ahead to the setting the guide words, unless anybody has any questions about that process.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so index formatted. This one that has been formatted, this is a different book. I'm going to take out, I'll just point these red things, there's like spelling, red. Braille 2000 is flagging anything that might not be spelled correctly because it doesn't show up with contracted Braille. But since this is a physics book, the reason it doesn't show up in contracted Braille is because a lot of these words are beyond normal English. So I'm going to take that off for right now, so it's not a distraction. I will leave the, I can show the print view to show this is basically formatted correctly. This has been put in nested list format. You have the 1 and 5, 3 and 5. But what I want to do right now is add the guide word. So first print word is absolute 0. The last print entry word is acid base chemistry. I'm going to do this back with the Braille view. Again, come to the top of the page. There are no guide words entered here if you see this all the way through this. I must have taken them out. I might have originally done these manually to go. And it's like, let's try it this way. Go to the top of the reference and do footer O. Select cell 1 guide words. And there they are. So absolute, acid base. Again, I would say I would make it say absolute 0. So it's not something else. So I'd come up here and I'd say, oh, I want this to be absolute 0. Like both words in there and they'll fit. Yeah. W for set guide word text. And it changed that at the bottom. And again, I go through and see it's done the whole file, and I would go through and see, do I want to change any of those additional words? It separates the, this is a formats guideline for guide words. You have the first word, then a dash, and then the closing word. So just scrolling down, I see they're all there. And then I get to where, whoops, got a blank line here. Let's take that out. And back in the day, before I used this tool, I would have to readjust all the pages before and after, and sometimes the guide words. But Braille 2000 will do that automatically. For some reason, there's a blank line. I don't care. It's less trouble than the other way. There might be a way to eliminate that. And I think scrolling down, if you have places where there are blank lines, it will pull the bottom line up, and it will also change the guide words if needed. Yeah, that went from base to basic. So that's how to set the guide words in the footer, and it's pretty much what I have there. If there are any questions.
Thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, I'm not seeing any in the chat, but we're gonna switch gears now and start looking at some math examples. So, but if anyone has any questions about glossary or index tagging, please do feel free to come off mute or ask your
Yeah, please do. And this
question.
was one I meant to ask you to talk about MathML when I could
Uh-huh.
just gonna
Yeah.
fix my files here, but
Yeah. So, and so if you download a NIMAS file that does not contain MathML, the math content of the book is going to be provided instead as images. And any any NIMAS file that contains MathML, you can actually download it without the MathML tagging if you would rather have the file that way. It is an option in the system. It's just a tool that's built in that at the point of download, you can select to strip out the MathML tagging and just download the images instead. This is something I think was maybe preferred more often when Braille software did not support MathML very well. But over the last, 5, 6 years, I think support for MathML in Braille software has improved greatly. And so I think now MathML tagging is really desirable to see in your NIMAS file. But there is still that option if you're someone who prefers to work with the images, has a different approach. You are still able to download your NIMAS files without that MathML tagging if you don't want it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, they'll fit there, so that should work. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Nemeth file because that's what I have in my notes. I had forgotten why I did Nemeth, like only Nemeth for like 30 some years. And then UEB came over. I grumbled for a while and got used to it, and I like it. But I'd forgotten about why Nemeth was so good. I want the 709 top of the page. And it does look prettier. There's somebody who's sometimes on here that it looks prettier. The Braille that the Nemeth does, and I agree. So, but they both work for whatever reasons. So this is an example. Now, this is a file that converted in Nemeth with the Braille 2000, the Braille Blaster to Braille 2000 tool. In the settings at the top, translation settings, I converted this as UEB with Nemeth. There's a couple options in there. So I'm just going to go down to the portion of the file. This is a fraction with words in it. And I really like this is the way this is done because I don't have to be typing them all out and inserting things. It's beautiful. So here's where it is. I'm going to display that. I'm pretty sure needs to be displayed because the new guidelines, when you're doing it, displaying with Braille, with the Nemeth, I think you display, but either I'm displaying it a line below, and so I'm going to make it 3 runovers and 5 with my speed Braille key. Now there's the opening Nemeth indicator, and we have the open fraction indicator, and just the word sped up. Print, numerator. Now, I'll go back and forth. This ST is actually the slash bar, so but it's done perfectly. I'm going to have to format it. Here's the equal sign, and according to formats, no, according to the Nemeth code, actually, you break before, if it doesn't all fit on a line, the text doesn't all fit on a line, or the expression doesn't all fit on a line, you break before the comparison symbols. I'm going to do that as runovers to the displayed expression. Number of parts chosen. Now this still doesn't fit on the line, so the next place you break is before the fraction indicator, the slash. And then I have total number of parts, closing Nemeth indicator, and that's there. And this was even as recently as 4 years ago. I don't think it was doing this all with the grade 1. It's beautiful. So that's one example. That's a fraction. Now I'm going to a different. I have these all pulled up, but I don't know. 7 or 9, is it 7 or 9? Yes. So here we have practice problems. Now this is the physics book. So these are not your simple fractions. They're fractions that have, if a fraction has the, well, this is Nemeth. Nemeth just does it as is. So let's go over here. And I'm going to format this box. So I would use my box line, cell 5 heading. The next line is a cell 7 heading that's been established in this book. It happens in every practice box. There's this one subheading, a heading here that I use as cell 5. Additional practice over here made as a cell 7. Probably put an icon in there that I'm not going to do right now. Instructions. Does anybody out there who's currently using Nemeth? It used to be, the instructions used to be 5 runovers and 3. I know in UEB instructions are blocked in 5. And then now that last I was doing Nemeth with UEB, they said, well, you do the 5 runovers and 3 because you've got Nemeth in it. I don't know if that's been changed. I'm just curious if anybody knows. But for right now, I'm going to do 5 and 3. This is one of those cases where the letters, the identifiers did not come in, the A, B, C, D. So I'm going to have to put those in manually. Now, the one thing, the expressions here are accurate. This line says 1 over x plus fraction y over 3. And the next one is the B, A over 2B minus 3 over 2. And this is all accurate math. The only thing that you're going to have to edit this because it's going to depend on the formatting of the textbooks and what's going on. Since this whole section is Nemeth, instead of putting a separate begin Nemeth indicators and end Nemeth indicators on each line, we just put one at the beginning of the section and then take those out. So I'm going to highlight all of that, and there's only 4. I would probably do it manually, but to show what I would do, I'm going to replace it with nothing. And those have disappeared. Now I'm going to, because I'm in Nemeth, I use the A punctuation indicator, period. So I'm inserting those, C period, D period. And then I can either do this globally, or there's only 3. I'm going to take out the closing Nemeth indicator and just leave the one at the end of the whole passage. So that is now formatted, except for my closing box line. And that's beautiful. Forgotten why I like Nemeth.
Julie did say in the chat that in response to your question that Nemeth formatting is used throughout.
Throughout for
the when you were asking about the instructions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then Lucas just asked, is this what you're working in currently, the beta version of like the version 3 that's importing the switch indicators that way, Rosemary?
No, this was version 2. Well, it was Braille Blaster to version 2. I'm not
Yeah,
working.
so it was Braille Blaster that that formatted that correctly, and then you pulled that file into Braille 2000.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
Good question, though. Good question.
yes. Thank you. Okay, so here's one more. I'm going to look at this particular page in this particular box in both the Nemeth and the UEB. I just have some different examples in UEB. So this is practice problems, page 712. Again, I'm going to, just go back into Braille 2000. I'm not going to worry about where it is. This would be formatted in the context of the book, but there's the practice problems, additional. There's your cell 5 and cell 7 headings. Remove the blank line, put the instructions in 5 run overs 3. Find each root, looking over here. This is numbers. Actually, that's not instructions. Find each. See, this is, again, because the identifiers didn't come in. This is actually problem number 1. So again, the speed Braille key, I just made it 1 run overs and 5. Here I used UEB 6 because the instructions are in UEB. Find each root, round the answer to the nearest hundredth. Find each root, round the answer to the nearest hundred. Again, I have 4 Nemeth expressions. They're labeled A, B, C, D. So I'm going to move my, I can either do it manually or just pull one up. I'm going to move my begin Nemeth indicator to the end of the instruction line. I'm going to take those out here, replace with nothing. I'm also going to take out, because I'm already in here, I'm going to take out the Nemeth termination indicator. Whoops. Why did that happen? You know what I did, what I'm not doing here. This is what I was saying. Don't do this. I'm not checking. Yes, to make sure I'm safe in the highlighted section. I would not want to remove all the Nemeth terminators from the whole file because they're in really sensible places. I forgot to replace them. I don't know why it's not doing it, so I'll just do it manually. And then this is already in Nemeth because of the begin Nemeth indicator. So I use the Nemeth A function indicator B. But it's all in there. So you can see here the square root of 22. Here's your square root indicator, 22, square root terminator. Letter B, the cubed root. Here's the opening, the cube is elevated, the 3, and then the opening radical for 729 and the closing. Square root of 676, correct notation. The cubed root again, the cube opening radical for 6.656 terminator, and then the Nemeth terminator for that passage. So again, this is beautiful, and just even working. We were talking about this earlier. I was working with this a couple of years ago with Liz, and just the progression that's been made, because back then the cubed roots were coming in funky, but now they're coming in beautifully. This is my 1 run over in 5. Is that 7? Simplify by writing without a radical sign. All right, there's the opening Nemeth indicator. I come down here. This is my B. Not my B, my A. And here's the exponent. So square root of 16A squared, that's a superscript 2, baseline indicator B, superscript indicator 4, baseline indicator, end of expression. Closing. Now I would take this out, closing Nemeth indicator, and remove the opening one. But I would much rather them be there than just left out, for us to have to enter. This is so much easier. So and there's your 9T, superscript 6, baseline, closing, and closing Nemeth indicator. And right, using exponents. And this is kind of like, well, no, I'd be consistent for consistency, even though there's just two. Square root of n cubed, remove that. And here's an example with the fraction. So we don't need the opening indicator. Open fraction indicator 1 over square root of, move this arrow, square root of a, closing. And this is where, and I'll show the UEB on that because this is where I realized, oh, that's right. That part was simpler with NIMAS, I think. But then UEB, there's the whole thing with grade 1 indicators when you need to insert them or when you don't. So we're going to take a look at that in a minute. But that's the NIMAS sample. Any questions about the NIMAS before I go on to the UEB section? Samples?
See, I'm not seeing any questions, but just to provide a little context for what Rosemary was saying about improvements, for folks who like to be in the weeds a little bit, Braille Blaster is going to be your strongest tool for doing that initial math conversion. Part of that is because in recent years, Braille Blaster has started to utilize MathCat behind the scenes to translate the MathML. MathCat is also used by a lot of screen reader software. It's a very strong tool for MathML conversion. So if you're someone maybe who used Braille Blaster previously, wasn't super impressed, hasn't revisited it, I would recommend revisiting it because I do think Rosemary can attest because she's looked at a lot of files for us over the last few years that translation is stronger, and I think you'll get a better starting point. You'll still have to do your work as a transcriber to clean it up, but I think it gives you a better starting point now.
Yeah. Yeah, and all that formatting that came in, even the fact that they were formatted in a list. So I had to insert the identifiers, but the fact that it's in a list, it feels so good.
Mhm. And yeah, Lucas is asking, Rosemary, do you typically import the MathML into Braille Blaster and then bring it over to Braille 2000? Is that your typical workflow?
Well, yes. And did you want to speak to the whole, because some of the files don't convert in version 2 because of the M table tagging, which I don't completely understand. So it's yeah, if it's math, I'm pretty much using Braille Blaster. Oh, bringing it in with Braille Blaster and then converting.
Hmm.
The
Yeah, we don't want to confuse people too much because Rosemary also uses, Braille 2000 version 3 sometimes, but that's in beta. It's not something that's available yet. So yeah, primarily using that Braille Blaster step for the import.
Liz keeps me from confusing myself and people. Thank you. All right, so let's look at the UEB. Now, I'm gonna do this one that we just did, just because it's here. I just paste these files in here. So here's the same box in UEB down here, and go back to this. So let's just take it to a new page because we would not split it between pages unless it was so huge it couldn't fit on one. Actually, no, that's not the one. That just says 708. I did these page numbers funny because I created this file. I started with 709 on the first, and then I have 708. 712 is down here. Just gonna. So I have an opening box. Now you've seen me do this 3 times with the additional practice. Knowing when I was working this book, knowing that it was all these practice problems had this additional practice through, I just went through and I did bold additional practice and replaced it with additional practice without the bold. So I'm doing this manually here because I started with the more raw file for this. But here I go. Here's number 6. I enter the 6, make it 1 run over some 5, find each root, round the answer to the nearest hundredth. So here's the first one. Again, I have to enter the A. So I have the grade 1 indicator before this is the problem I'm referring to in print over here, square root of 22, letter A. So I have the grade 1 indicator before the opening radical, and then the numeric indicator 22 and the closing indicator. So here's B. Now here, this is beautiful that this is caught. There's a grade 1. This up here was a grade 1 symbol indicator in A for the radical. You don't need any more grade 1 indicators because the minute you use a numeric indicator in UEB, it sets grade 1 mode. So that numeric indicator for 22 says, oh, we don't need any more grade 1 indicators, even in front of the closing radical symbol. So here, there's the grade 1 word indicator for B because, yeah, you have the opening radical symbol and then the superscript indicator for the number 3. And then the 729 is a superscript. Is that correct in there? Superscript and then 3. And then number 729 and closing. This just always confused me when I got into UEB. It's correct. If I'm mistaken, somebody tell me, please. I'm thinking, but, because that's how they do it. That's how you do it. When there's a number outside the radical, that's the 3. This is saying this is the cubed root of 729. Yeah. It's just so different than NIMAS. I have to think what. So I'm going down here to the next line. And I have this square root of 676, grade 1, opening radical symbol, 676, closing radical symbol. D, again, we have a cubed root, so we have a grade 1 word symbol, double. Here's the cube, the beginning of the, yeah, because there's the superscript 3, cubed root of 4, 6.656 closing. And then we're down to the next problem, which is 7. I just set that 1 run-overs in 3, 1 run-overs in 5 with my speed Braille key. Come to the end of the word sign, hit enter, put that in 3. So here we have some more with the exponents. This is the 7a. So we have opening radical 16. We need the grade 1 indicator in front of the A. This is different in UEB than NIMAS because the numbers are all upper. And then the superscript indicator 2. That's, and I'm looking over here, A squared. And then the letter B and the superscript indicator 4 and closing radical. Here's B, opening radical 9, T, superscript 6, closing. Right, exponents. There's opening N cubed, closing. And here's the, now here in this case, we have a fraction. If it's a simple fraction, the MathML, it comes in a MathML just as it should with the numeric indicator. Let's just say this was 1/2. It would show, it would come in like this. Just like that. That's with the simple fraction notation. However, recognizes that this 1 is a number, but this is not. And so we need the general fraction indicator. So it's opening general fraction indicator 1, the general fraction slash, and then the opening radical A, closing radical, closing fraction. And that's that one. Any questions on that one? And I have a few more. They're
Great. Yeah, I think we have time maybe for one more example. Julie did put in the chat that you're right about the superscript indicator. It only affects the next item, and that if it affected the whole radical, you'd need the Braille grouping indicator
yeah,
for that.
that's a UEB thing, yeah. But
Hmm.
MathML does, thank you, Julie. MathML does bring all that in. The tagging brings all that in correctly. All right, one more, then we'll quickly do this one in 708. Yeah, I'm just going to show this briefly. I'm not going to end up formatting the whole thing, but it's something to be aware of. Is that this one? This one? Yeah, it's supposed to pop up so I can see what you're doing. No, I already did that one. This one. Yeah. So here we have an example of this displayed, well, this whole spatial expression. F equals square root of 24n squared plus 36n squared in the next line. So the way that came in, the math is all accurate. Let's just come down here and do that. So they have an opening grade 1 passage indicator because all of this can be covered by this 3 grade 1 symbols. So we don't have to repeat a plethora of grade 1 symbol indicators within the expression. So this is something I haven't found out to my satisfaction yet. I'm remembering how this was done in Nemeth, and I think that this get what it's called, but because we have the equals down here, I think we drop this one down to the next line and put that in 5. That's a UEB math thing, but so we're gonna, somebody knows out there, let me know, let us know. But this is just to look at the MathML and how to do this. So we have opening. Don't need the grade 1 indicators anymore because these 3 cover the whole expression. We have opening, radical, and then opening parentheses, 24, capital N, closing parentheses, superscript 2, plus opening parentheses, 36, capital N, closing parentheses, superscript 2, closing radical. Now, at the end of the line, you see these 2 things that look like 2, I call them Nemeth pluses. They could be 2 visible space indicators, ing. I'm pretty sure that what this is this is something that Braille Blaster has created to alert us to the fact that this is kind of like carriage return. I just dated myself. Next line. So it just hit enter and it goes down to the next line. Here's the equals. So the second line following open radical 576n superscript 2 plus 1296n superscript 2 closing radical. And now here's where we have these notes here. Technically the notes, unless you choose to format it some other way, the notes are going to be go in the line below. Do not round to 580 n squared and 1300 n squared. Because this passage indicator is reading everything as grade 1 Braille, as math, they are inserting a bunch of stuff in here. They're spelling everything out and they're bold typing it all. That's understandable. It's as it is in print. You have a couple of choices. I'm going to move it down first and display it over there. And then I'm going to ignore it for right now and just let's finish out the math. Equals 1872. Where is that equal? I look through here. This is kind of gobbledygook because of the bold type indicators. So what I do, because I much prefer direct entry and I've been doing it for since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I would just like, now what I'm going to have to do, I don't even know if I need that. I don't think I need that. What I'm going to have to do is put an ending grade 1 indicator there at the end of the math line because now I'm getting out of grade 1. And then I'll start it up again. No, not enough. I'm wanting to do a Nemeth indicator. But I'm going to delete that from Braille. So I could also go in and edit it, but that's messy, so I didn't do it that way. Here's the next part of the math. Yeah, where do we put that? Somebody has an opinion on that, Julie. Like that looks messy putting that in front of the equal sign. but this is for the next line, equals opening radical 1872 and move that superscript 2, closing radical again. Well, I could actually just make that. This is one of those things that last I looked, it's kind of like subjective how you want to do it. Just be consistent throughout the file. Because that, no, that does need, never mind. Does need a passage because there's a space between the equals. Sometimes in UEB you can take out the space. So you just make it a UEB word indicator. This is where it gets fuzzy with UEB, but that's a UEB issue, not a yeah, so actually I took that, I'd be entering that again, not round and so on. Now it helps if I have my fingers on the right keys. And then I have to go back to the, is that how you would do it? Somebody out there?
Julie said, I don't know either about where to put this.
This is why we like Nemeth, right? Because Nemeth was so clear. I get it. They were trying to learn it. The whole world was trying to learn it. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you could do it this way. And
Julie suggested maybe dot locator for use and then grade 1 passage indicator on a line by itself to preserve the alignment of
that's
the.
right. Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly it. So real quick, this is the other. Yes. Well, but you're still going to have, what do you do with this stuff? To stop it? Or do you, because we still have to put
She said she meant to put that after the comment. So I think before,
after the
like
comment.
not at the very beginning, but after
Oh,
the
gotcha.
comment. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I closed this out. But for anyone who's, not done math yet, these are just, and anybody who's just doing Nemeth, I think Mr. Nemeth was brilliant. So I like both in their place, but yeah, that this is kind of the stuff. Ended that. So would you put it here? It's still you have to do it multiple times because there's notes. What I do sometimes is I just find a way to put the notes down below. It depends on the context, and you just try to be consistent. But those are the kind of just transcriber decisions that we need to make. I just want to show how that comes in there because the math is beautiful. It's all accurate, and just be aware that sometimes you might have this interspersed, and you have to figure out, make a decision how to format it. So.
That's a great example, Rosemary. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and we got about 5 minutes left, so we can switch. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Kind of recap what we've talked about today. It was a busy day, for sure. We talked about alphabetic references, both the glossary and the index, and Rosemary showed some examples of how to format both and how to use that handy tool for setting guide words, which I can totally imagine how tedious that would have been previously. So that was really cool. I'm sure that's super, super helpful.
Awesome.
And especially for the larger textbook, the glossary or index can be extremely lengthy. So yeah, I think that would be a good time-saving tool. And then we obviously also talked about math, talked a little bit about MathML. If you have any questions more specific to NIMAS files and math tagging in NIMAS, that's also something that we would be happy to talk a little bit more about next week in session 6. So don't hesitate either to reach out by email or put that in the exit survey as well. But Rosemary today showed some examples of transcribing both in Nemeth and in UEB technical, specifically kind of focusing on fractions and radicals and exponents, common things that you will come across in most math content. I think we have time if anyone has kind of a lingering question about anything that we've gone over today? Let me take a quick look at the chat. I'm not seeing any questions. Does anyone have maybe a question about either math or the alphabetic references? Okay, someone would like me to talk a little bit. Yeah, we can definitely touch a little bit more on MathCat next time around. I think it's actually pretty relevant to the eBraille conversation as well. So happy to do that. And speaking of next week, session 6, the final session of our series. It'll be a two-parter. The first part on the NIMAC will be talking about the eBraille file format, both what it is, how it works, and the timeline for both tools to produce eBraille as well as tools to read eBraille. So we'll talk about all of that next week, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll also have kind of a wrap-up Q&A time. I think there are a few things, few questions that we maybe haven't had time to address that we'll dive into and just some general discussion. So please do bring your questions if you have any. And with that, we do have our exit survey of the QR code up on the screen, and the link is in the chat as well. There's a spot at the end of the survey for you to ask your questions. So if there is something that you'd really like us to talk about more during session 6, or to get back with you, privately via email, um, happy to do that as well. So if you could please take a moment to fill out the exit survey, it's very helpful for us as we are crafting our technical assistance for our accessible media producers. We really love to hear from you. And with that, I will go ahead and stop our recording.